probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 head maybe. Sure is cool. One of them's kind of limping there in the back. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Brought you up to the corner of our property, and I wanted to tell you about an incident that we had on the property, and that is we had an elk poached on our property, and it was quite an ordeal. But you can see the hide here behind me, what I ultimately found in the corner area of our property, basically at our neighbor's fence. And I'm going to give you all the details about what happened, how it happened, and how the person ultimately got arrested. So thanks for stopping by the channel. I thought it might be interesting to pass this story along. Watched other videos where folks have talked about trespassers and poachers and different things on their property. And it's always good to know what goes on and how people deal with it. Okay, so as I said, we had a trespasser on our property. It's been a couple weeks now since the incident happened, and I debated quite a bit as to whether to do a video on this or not. I just decided I'm going to go ahead and put it out there as to what happened. The case obviously still isn't closed. It's still open, and I'm sure the Oregon State Police is still investigating. So I'm not going to get into names and all of that sort of stuff. But this occurred on January 1st, and I was down by the pond, and I'm going to assume that a lot of my viewers follow the channel and know the areas and stuff that I'm talking about, so I'm not going to get into a lot about the locations on the property and so on. But I was down at the pond doing some chipping with the tractor. It was about 8:30 in the morning. The elk had come through our property. They come through here every year, and I'm going to include a couple videos of them coming through the property so you can see, or I guess a video and some pictures. So you can see they came through last year, and it's usually end of December, first part of January, they'll come through and sometimes stay a day or two, and then they kind of keep moving on. And they'll actually come through the yard here that's behind me, and then they will go all the way through and go into this field that is behind me over here. This is my neighbor's barn, and this field behind me is our field, and then there's another field next to it, and then there's a hill of mixed forest and pasture. The hill where the forest and pasture is above the pond, and that's where the incident occurred. The elk had been in this field about 3 days. They had come through the end of December and had been here about 3 days. They basically stayed up in this field and that forest area, and obviously were grazing and so on, and then they, like I said, typically move on. And so this was day 3 when I heard the gunshot at 8:30 in the morning. It sounded like it was really close to me, but the trees above the pond, you really can't see anything on top of the hill. I waited a little while. It was probably about 30 minutes, and I heard another gunshot. And so I pulled out my phone and tried to look up the Oregon regs, found that 2 hunts for the area ended on December 30th. Granted, I was on my phone, so it's difficult to look at a PDF that's 100 and some odd pages, but it looked to me like there was no legal hunt at the time in our area. Let me stop there and say that I'm not opposed to hunting. I've done hunting in the past. I'll probably do hunting in the future. I don't hunt all the time, but I'm not opposed to hunting. I'm not opposed to hunters. And I'm going to post some pictures of myself and my daughter with some animals that we've taken over the past several years. And like I say, I haven't went hunting recently, probably in the last few years, but I am totally not opposed to hunting. I think it's a privilege and an honor. I recognize that the animals are owned by the state, which means they're owned by everyone, and that you have a right to hunt, providing that you follow the rules so that it's fair and legal for everyone. That's kind of my 2 cents on it. In any case, after I heard the second gunshot and after I looked at the regs for the local area, I was under the impression that there was no legal hunt available. So I called the tip line for Oregon State Police, who is the game enforcement for the state of Oregon. Basically told them just what I've told you, that there was a herd in our property for 3 days. I heard 2 gunshots and I don't see a legal hunt. And it's basically up above where the herd is. Now the herd is running, and I'm not sure what the circumstances are. I haven't seen anybody beyond that. And I didn't want to go up on the hill to confront or investigate. So this area behind me is where the pond is at. This is the area that I was chipping, and I had taken down a few small trees and I was chipping limbs up there. And this area right behind me now is the forest area that's on top of the hill. You can kind of see my side-by-side tracks that go up there, and it actually goes all the way up behind me, and it's about 4 acres up on top of the hill there. The pictures that I showed you of the animals were the field that was in the first scene where I was talking, and then this field behind me is where the animals were at when I called the tip line. I ultimately got a call back from a state trooper that was about 45 minutes to an hour out, and so he drove from there to our area and basically did an area check of the area. At this point, I didn't have any more information other than I saw a vehicle, consistent vehicle going up and down the road. Gave him a description of that, but I really didn't have any other information. After it had been about an hour and I saw that OSP, the state trooper, was in the area, then I went ahead and took the side-by-side and went up the hill. Like I said, early on, I didn't want to confront them, but I figured after an hour, it was probably going to be not an issue. So I drove up to the top of the hill and basically drove up to corner of the fence line, which you kind of got a little glimpse of in the opening of this video, and saw 2 individuals bent over behind a side-by-side. Appeared to me to be dressing out an animal. The side-by-side belonged to my neighbor, but my neighbor was not one of the 2 individuals that I saw. And at that point, I just turned around and came back to the house, and I called the trooper back and told him again what I had seen, and that there was 2 individuals up there. In the process of coming this direction and getting to the area, the trooper checked the regs, and probably on a regular computer, I assume, and was able to find that there were 2 hunts that started on the 1st of January. And when I located these 2 individuals, they were actually just over the fence on my neighbor's property with my neighbor side by side. So both myself and the trooper assumed that they were legal, that they had not shot on my property, although it was suspicious. That was basically the end of it. At that point, we decided we weren't going to pursue it or confront them, because we gave them the benefit of the doubt that it was legal. So it was the next day, my neighbor that owned the side-by-side called me and asked me if he could come over and talk to me. And ultimately he did come over and borrow a piece of equipment from me. And while we were chatting, he asked me if I had heard the gunshots, and I said that I had. He said that his neighbor came over and was hunting on his property. The neighbor had a tag to take an elk, got an elk down, and called him to borrow his side-by-side to retrieve the animal. He mentioned the neighbor's name. He told me that the neighbor retrieved the animal and actually shot it on my property and then dragged the animal under the fence to his side of the property. He informed his neighbor to call me and notify me that he was entering my property, which he didn't do. And then after the neighbor brought the elk down to his house to take it to his own house, he covered the animal with a tarp in the back of his pickup. My neighbor thought that was suspicious, and so he just told me about it and thought it was unusual, which definitely is unusual. At that point, I notified OSP again of what I had learned of the neighbor's first name and the suspicion that we had with regard to just the activity and what the fellow did when he retrieved the animal. The Oregon State Police did a good job in investigating and determining, I would assume, who had tags in the area. And this individual did not have a tag or a hunting license. And they were able to locate the individual and retrieve the butchered animal, confiscate his rifle, and arrest him for poaching the animal. I did not pursue trespassing charges, and I had even told the state trooper ahead of time that in the event that the hunter was a legal hunter and he had trespassed, like I had learned, that I didn't think it would be ideal, but that I could live with it. But I wanted to make sure that he was at least hunting legally. And it turned out that he was not. And so OSP did subsequently arrest him. I have to give the gentleman that they arrested credit. He contacted me through my neighbor and ultimately came over and apologized for trespassing on the property and for taking the animal and not being legally licensed and tagged to do so. And so I'm hoping that that's the end of the story as far as any sort of issues between neighbors, because I didn't want to have that happen. But at the same time, I think everybody has to do the right thing and respect people's property and respect the rules of the road, basically, for lack of a better term. So anyway, that's the story. I hope you found it informative and interesting. And I also looked up under Oregon state law, and I'm not sure what it is in other states, obviously, but the value of a cow elk in Oregon is $5,000. And that is the statutory sanction. I would assume that the courts can suspend some of that fine or some of that cost. And I don't know what the outcome will be with regard to this situation and the cost involved. But it's an expensive decision to make when you take an animal illegally. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching the videos and subscribing and sharing them. I appreciate it. And I will talk to you soon.